This is Dr. Grande. Today I will offer an update on the case of Tom Phillips. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Thomas Callum Phillips was born on May 6, 1987, and was raised in New Zealand. He went by the name Tom. When he was young, Tom attended a private and exclusive school in Hamilton called St. Paul's Collegiate School. As part of his education, he spent 6 months in an outdoor survival skills program. Tom transformed into a capable hunter, hiker, and survivalist, and spent a lot of time alone in rural areas. Sometime around 2010, he married a woman named Catherine, who went by the name Cat. Some married couples agonize over finding a joint nickname, but theirs practically wrote itself, Tomcat. In 2013, the couple had a daughter named Jada, in 2014, a son named Maverick, and in 2016, a daughter named Ember. The family lived in a small town 35 miles south of Hamilton on the North Island of New Zealand. The North Island is just under 44,000 square miles, just a little smaller than the state of Ohio. Only 1% is urbanized. The rest of the island contains farmland, plantation forests, native bush, mountains, rivers, lakes, and coastlines. Tom, his wife Kat, and his children spent much of their time with Tom's family members who owned a farm in the rural area of Maricopa, which is 73 miles southwest of Hamilton. The town of Maricopa itself sits on the coast. There are no stores in the town. Many of the roads there are gravel. There was no internet service until 2025, and the town only has 69 residents. In 2018, Tom and Kat separated. The Tomcat was no more. Kat moved to the South Island of New Zealand. Tom retained custody of the children and homeschooled them on the North Island. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On September 13, 2021, Tom's Toyota Hilux pickup truck was found on a beach near Maricopa on the west coast of the North Island. It was below the high tide line, pointed toward the sea, and being slammed by the waves. Local men were able to move the vehicle back up the beach after finding the key under the driver's side floor mat. People wondered if Tom and his 3 children had been swept out to sea. The authorities launched a large-scale search effort using fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, boats, and drones. On September 24, 2021, the search, which had cost the government several $100,000, was suspended after failing to turn up anything. 6 days later, on September 30, Tom and his children showed up at the Phillips family farm, as if nothing happened. According to one of Tom's relatives, Tom claimed he had been living in a tent about 9 miles from where his Toyota had been found on the beach. He was there because he wanted space to clear his head. Given the size of Tom's head, that could take a long time. Tom was arrested and charged in connection with wasting police resources. He was facing up to 3 months in jail. Some members of the public sympathized with Tom, believing it should not be illegal to take children on a camping trip. Sure, Tom should have told family members what he was doing, but failing to do so did not constitute a criminal act. Other people were not as understanding. They were angry at Tom for putting the lives of searchers at risk and wasting taxpayer money. On December 9, 2021, Tom and his 3 children went missing again. This time there was no search effort because Tom told his family that he was going away for a while. On January 12, 2022, a warrant was issued for Tom's arrest after he missed his court appearance in the town of Takuiti. His pickup truck was found abandoned on Mangatoa Road. On February 9, Tom showed up alone at the Phillips family farm and picked up supplies. He did not mention where his children were located, but he claimed they were fine. The police looked for Tom and his children, but complained they were not receiving cooperation from the public. Tom continued to enjoy support from many local residents who believed the charges against him were unfair. On May 16, 2023, a bank in Takuiti was robbed by 2 people wearing motorcycle helmets. One was a man, and the other appeared to be a young female. When bank employees asked them to remove their helmets, the robbers produced firearms and demanded money. They fled the bank with cash stuffed in their pockets. As they were running down the street, money was falling out all over the place. About $1,000 ended up on the ground. After a person who was unaware of the robbery offered to help the young female pick up the money, the owner of a supermarket realized what was going on and tackled the male perpetrator. The female perpetrator responded by producing a firearm. It's not exactly clear what happened next, but gunshots were fired by at least one of the perpetrators, causing the owner of the supermarket to disengage. The perpetrators ran to a parking lot, climbed onto a motorcycle, and drove away. 4 months later, the police said the male perpetrator was Tom Phillips, and they charged him with aggravated robbery, aggravated wounding, and unlawful possession of a firearm. The police never identified the second perpetrator, but they did confirm that she was female. This led to speculation that she was Tom's oldest daughter, Jada. On August 2, 2023, Tom was spotted driving a stolen 2003 Toyota Hilux in Hamilton. His children were not in the vehicle with him. Tom visited 2 different hardware stores. To conceal his identity, he was wearing a surgical mask, extra layers of clothing, and a wool hat. Apparently, he managed to find a hat in the size of weather balloon. Using cash, Tom purchased seedlings, buckets, batteries, boots, and headlamps. Later that same day, the owner of the Toyota Hilux pursued Tom on a road in Maricopa, but Tom managed to get away. The truck was found a few feet off Maricopa Road near the Phillips family farm. On November 2, 2023, Tom and one of his children allegedly drove a stolen quad bike into a small town 14 miles southwest of Tecuity and tried to break into a small supermarket. They fled the scene at about 2 a.m. after an alarm activated. In October 2024, an adult and 3 children were captured on video walking through a farm in Maricopa. The police believed this was Tom and his children. On August 27, 2025, an adult and a child were captured, allegedly breaking into a convenience store using an angle grinder. They loaded milk onto their quad bike and drove away. They were there for 13 minutes in total. The police believed that this was Tom and one of his children. On September 8, 2025, at 2:30 a.m., the police received a report of a burglary in the town of Pio Pio. The target was a farm supply store. 2 people on a quad bike had been spotted. They were dressed in farm clothing and wearing headlamps. The police encountered the alleged burglars driving a quad bike on a rural road. One was Tom, and the other was his 12-year-old daughter, Jada. There were items from the farm supply store attached to the quad bike. Tom continued driving, and the police initiated a pursuit. At 3:20 a.m., a police officer put down spike strips at the intersection of Waipuna Road and Tianga Road, 20 miles north. Tom ran over the spike strips and came to a stop a short distance away. He dismounted the quad bike, produced a rifle, and fired at the officer who was getting out of his vehicle. The officer was struck in the head multiple times and took cover in his police cruiser as Tom continued to fire. A few seconds later, another police officer arrived at the scene and fired on Tom, killing him. Jada was taken into custody without incident. 3 firearms were found in Tom's possession, including the rifle he used to shoot the police officer. At 4:30 p.m., with the help of Jada, the police found the other 2 children, 10-year-old Maverick and 9-year-old Ember, at a campsite 1.2 miles away in Waitomo. They were uninjured. 1 firearm was found at this campsite. 650 feet away from the campsite, the police found another campsite, which they believe was Tom's primary campsite. The officer who Tom Phillips shot was seriously wounded, but is expected to survive. He has a long road to recovery. Now moving to my analysis. According to the authorities, all 3 children are in protective custody. Presumably, the government will correctly treat them as victims and not as perpetrators in connection with any of the offenses Tom committed. Tom had complete control over them. If any of them participated in criminal activity, it is only because they were manipulated. Tom probably poisoned his children with his ideology, although the exact nature of his ideology is unknown. It's not clear what he was trying to accomplish or why he fled into the wilderness. Was he angry about the criminal charges for wasting resources? Was he simply trying to rebel against the government? There's no way to know. I would guess that he offered some type of explanation to his children as to why they were living in the wilderness. After all, this was an atypical experience. Perhaps he made them believe their lives would be a lot worse if they were caught, like the big bad government would throw them in jail or otherwise punish them. The region of the North Island where Tom and his children lived in isolation had a lot of hills, forests, farmland, and limestone caves. The campsites were described as very dirty and not very nice for children. It is reasonable to believe the children had a terrible existence for the 4 years their father kept them in those conditions. They probably didn't receive any medical or mental health care. Tom's homeschooling efforts represented a substandard educational experience, and the children missed important socialization opportunities to aid in healthy development. The police believe that Tom received support from the community, which is how he managed to remain out in the wilderness for so long. He was like a folk hero who was teaching the government a lesson about their tyrannical policies. In my opinion, his supporters saw something in Tom that really wasn't there. They liked his antagonism toward the government, so they promoted him to the level of mythical figure. Failing to provide information about Tom's whereabouts, or even aiding in his rebellious behavior, made people feel as though they were making a difference. They were fighting back. It was a rare victory against what they considered to be an oppressive government. In reality, Tom was a disturbed individual who was putting his children through a nightmare. There were no substantive, significant, or philosophical messages hidden in his behavior. If Tom had this kind of power over some local residents using a half-baked scheme, the influence he had over his children must have been immense. He was a larger-than-life role model, and due to the isolation, their only role model. When they gazed upon him, his massive head blocked out the rest of the world. Many people are angry at the authorities in New Zealand for not finding Tom and his children sooner. If they could have located him, the confrontation could have occurred on their own terms, instead of a shootout during the early morning hours at a dark intersection in the middle of nowhere. By not actively searching for him, the authorities allowed Tom to dictate the terms. The low-cost strategy adopted by the government was based on Tom making a mistake and getting caught as a result. The authorities felt as though they could not justify spending millions of dollars on a large-scale search. After all, there was no indication that Tom wanted to harm his children. Eventually, Tom would have to surface, and when he did, he would be arrested. I believe the authorities may have underestimated how destructive it was for the children to be in the wilderness for years. This wasn't just a father trying to spend some time with his children. He was actively harming them. It may not have been his intent, but the result was the same. Arguably, the children are now at risk to develop antisocial traits. They will probably need a lot of mental health counseling to cope with the experience. The police may have killed Tom, but they did not erase the children's memory of him. He will still loom as a formidable figure in their lives, with his massive head casting a shadow over them for years to come. Children are often more resilient than people think, but this case is so unusual, it is difficult to predict what will happen to them. They did not experience a one-time trauma, rather chronic instability in unpleasant conditions. Will they bounce back, or was their development too severely interrupted to recover? How will they cope with the loss of their father? Will they understand why the police killed him, or will they grow angry at the government like he was? How long will it take the children to build attachment to new people? Over time, I'm sure the authorities will interview the children and gain a better understanding of what effect Tom had on them. According to the media, a documentary was being filmed about this case at the time Tom was killed. If the documentary is produced, it could lead to more insight into what happened. This brings me to the question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Tom Phillips was self-centered, grandiose, overconfident, impulsive, irresponsible, excitement-seeking, reckless, arrogant, bizarre, violent, had a sense of entitlement, and was exceedingly creepy. He took his children into the wilderness as a way of avoiding prison, or maybe just to rebel against the authorities. After being elevated to folk hero status, Tom enjoyed assistance from the community. Some people liked how the police were being repeatedly embarrassed over their failure to apprehend Tom. Despite having some assistance, Tom still needed to steal in order to survive. After stealing from a store on September 8, 2025, Tom's luck ran out. Rather than surrender and give up his ridiculous and pointless crusade, Tom attempted to kill a police officer before being gunned down himself. His final treacherous and cowardly act may encourage his supporters to abandon putting Tom on a pedestal. Now maybe he will lose his folk hero status. They may finally realize that the only thing oversized about him was his head. Those are my thoughts in the case of Tom Phillips. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.